If you own a GE washing machine that looks like this one and you can't get it to complete a cycle because it just won't spin, it will drain, it will lock, maybe it'll even agitate, but it just simply will not spin and errors out. I want to show you all the different things you could look for in this machine that would cause it not to spin. We'll go from some of the easy things to some of the hard things with some advanced testing and error code that we can look through to try to get this machine back in working order. And if by some reason you do end up finding that you need to purchase a part to replace this, I will have some links in the description. There are links to the ones my company sells. If you use the links, it helps us out to make more of these videos. But let's get to it and try to figure out what could be wrong on the machine that would cause it not to spin. Now, if you're watching this and you have a ton of water still in the tub, the easiest way to remove all that water is to grab a bucket and let the water drain into the bucket by making sure that the hose is near the level of the floor. All the water should naturally siphon out. This may take a little bit of time to do, but it will work. First, let's start with the absolute basics. Is there any damage, kinks, or issues with the hose itself? If the hose is bound up, it is possible that it is draining slightly, but not well enough, causing the control board not to work right. Also, make sure that the drain hose is not too far into the pipe. You want to make sure it's not super far into the standpipe, especially if there's a 45-degree angle, which could cause the water to shoot back into the hose rather than down into the pipe. Also, make sure that the drain hose is at least 30 inches high from the bottom of the floor. If it's less than 30 inches, you may run into siphoning issues where the washer is draining water and filling it at the same time, which can cause all sorts of problems for the unit not to work right when it pumps water out. Instead of testing every single component on this washing machine, let's try to see if we can find the hidden tech manual underneath. Make sure you have the washing machine in a safe area and tilt it back or to the side to look underneath it. On the side or behind, you should find a hidden technician's manual with hidden codes. It could be in a plastic pouch, but it should be somewhere around here. If you cannot find it, I will have a link in the description to a manual for one of the older machines that you can use for reference. Make sure to unplug the machine and move it to where you can access the rear. To start with, let's take a 1/4-inch screwdriver and remove the 2 screws located on each side of the back plate. Some models could have additional screws in the back metal cover on the back of the plate, but once you have all the screws removed, you'll need to slide the metal housing to the right and then away, exposing the back of the console entirely. Next, there is either a cardboard or plastic flap, which once removed will expose the board, and also from here you can see the gray pressure hose that's attached to the PCB. It could be kinked, damaged, or disconnected, and this would be a quick reason why the unit may not have started. To access the console though, unplug the pressure hose first and then press it backwards towards the rear of the machine, and you could have to tap hard on it, then pull up and outwards, letting you rotate it. With the console dislodged, roll the console forward. With the control board exposed, we need to find where the drain pump system wires are ran to test the circuit with a multimeter. You can use the schematic that we just found to see where the drain pump is on the board and what colored wires are used to control the pump. In the case of this machine, the wires are white and purple. To test the wires, make sure that the multimeter is set to ohms resistance, unplug the wire harness that handles the drain pump, figure out which wires handle the pump, then press on the leads of the multimeter into the harness. You should get an ohm resistance value of whatever the schematic says, but it should be around 13 ohms. If you don't get any value, one of two things has happened. Either the pump motor is totally bad, or a wire in the harness has been damaged or disconnected between the drain pump and the control board. Next, go ahead and plug the harness back in. The next test is rather difficult, and you don't need to try this if you found that the pump or the wire is defective. This is definitely an advanced trick. Make sure that the gray pressure hose is installed in the back of the board, and what we want to do is set the multimeter to AC voltage. Make sure at this point that the washing machine is plugged in, and you want to make sure that you have rubber gloves and that the console's up and accessible. What we want to do now is test the washing machine in the drain and spin mode. So with the leads in place, rotate the dial to the drain and spin button and press the start button to see if the drain pump will work in this mode. In some cases, it's possible that it won't work in this mode due to some other dependency, but you should get 120 volts AC if the unit is working properly from the board to the pump. In my case, I'm going to do a forced mode test. I have other videos that show you how to do this, but the quick gist of it is without anything on the screen of the GE washing machine, press and hold the start/pause button, rotate the dial 7 clicks clockwise or counterclockwise to the opposite side of where the dial initially was, then release the start button. All the lights should flicker on and off, and then you want to rotate the dial counterclockwise 8 notches. This will set the unit on the forced drain mode, which will be the soak and wash lights that are illuminated. If you press start button from here, you're going to see the voltage meter jump to 118 to 125 volts if the board is working. But if at this point you've tried the forced mode and it is not at 118 to 125 volts, chances are something is wrong with the board and you will need to replace it. Press and hold the start button for about 3 seconds to end the test and then shut down the forced defrost mode. With this test done, let's go ahead and put the control console and board back into place. You'll rock the plastic console down into place, then tap the console forward to lock it into the washer top housing. Then put the metal panel on and slide it back into place to lock it in. Use a 1/4-inch hex head screwdriver to put the 2 long screws back into place between the metal panel and the plastic console. Now let's go ahead and get to the underneath side of the washing machine and check for a few more issues. You'll need to have the washing machine placed in a way where you can lay it almost nearly on its back, but make sure to watch out for the drain hose as you don't want to have it lower than the bottom of the machine, or else any water that's left in the unit will drain out in the hose on the floor. So place a box behind the unit to keep it slightly elevated. Make sure to pay attention to the lid moving as well as we tip the machine over. You could use some tape to secure it in place, but I have the drain hose in it so it won't work too well. Underneath the machine, do you see any initial issues or damage possible? But to remove it to look inside, you'll need a 3/8 socket wrench or screwdriver. There are 3 screws that need removed. Note that one of these screws may have a grounding strap on it, so make note of it during the reinstallation later. Here is the location of the drain pump harness. If you didn't get a connection with a multimeter, check and make sure that this wire harness is properly attached, but at this juncture we're going to remove the harness and drain pump anyway to show you how it works. There are 3 screws that hold the pump in place, and to remove them you need the same 3/8 socket wrench that we used to remove the belt cover. You need to remove the harness holder for the wire with a pair of side snips, then use a slipped jawed wrench to remove the retainer hose on the pump. Move it off and slide it away from the drain pump, then use a socket wrench to remove the pump finally. With the pump removed, check for debris between the tub and the pump housing. Also check the black hose that runs from the pump to the drain hose for obstructions as well. If either area has an obstruction, then you definitely want to remove it. Back to the drain pump, one thing you physically want to do is test the impeller. The easiest way to do this is to separate the drain pump from the housing with a Phillips head screwdriver. You will remove 5 screws from the gray side of the pump. With the screws out, you can split the pump in half. You want to check for damage or obstructions to the pump, and you can see here there's a little bit of debris inside the pump itself. But one key of the drain pump here is to check the plastic impeller for resistance. If you rotate the pump, you should feel a strong amount of magnetic resistance. There are 3 or 4 segments on the pump that you'll feel this strong resistance, and then once past it, the pump will spring forward. And if you don't feel that strong resistance when rotating the pump, it means that the magnets inside the drain pump are shot and the whole pump needs replaced. And you could even still get a good number on the multimeter in terms of ohms, but still have this issue. And I always suggest checking this. The GE pump has a custom wire harness on it, so if it's bad, you need to replace the entire pump assembly, and I will have a link to it in the description. Back to reinstall the pump, make sure it is oriented correctly on the housing, then reattach the 3/3/8 screws. Then reattach the wire harness into place. You may have to reattach a cable tie on the harness for the new pump, and that should be included with a replacement drain pump. Then use the wrench and reinsert the spring onto the pump housing like you see here. Next, to reinstall the belt cover, you'll attach the 3 screws with a 3/8 socket wrench. Now, on the bottom screw, at least from my angle on this unit, I had to reinstall that grounding strap we talked about earlier, which was a little bit difficult to get on camera, but you do get the idea. These are all the major things I would look for on a GE washer that's not pumping or draining water properly. The one thing that we went over a few times, but not in depth, was if the unit wire harness was not sending voltage to the pump, You would then have to look for any other areas where the wire had been damaged or broken. It's rare, but it does happen, and in general, you would look for areas where the wire could rub up against the cable ties or other areas of the washing machine. And remember, if you do need a drain pump, I will have a link for this style that we replaced on the unit, and if you can support the channel by buying it, I would appreciate it. But at any rate, I hope this video helped you, and you have a wonderful day.